Hey guys, welcome to The Strong Young Man. Unless you've taken the red pill, your attitude towards marriage is likely to be unrelentingly positive. Unfortunately, if you're a man in a Western country, marriage could be the biggest mistake you'll ever make. For most women, marriage is a lifelong ambition, a very desirable achievement with a very low risk of negative consequences. For men, the reality of marriage is actually very, very different. There is an extremely dark side to marriage for men that is very deliberately kept hidden from men by women so that women can continue to fulfill their lifelong ambitions of marriage and family at the expense of men. Today I intend to shine some light on this darkness. Simply put, the dark side of marriage is that women are financially rewarded for breaking marriage contracts. Through divorce, women usually acquire about 80% of their husband's wealth, obtain majority of child custody, and child support income to support the child. Some territories stipulate that spousal maintenance or alimony is paid directly to the ex-wife to maintain the lifestyle she experienced during the marriage, even if you're earning less in the future. The entire system is set up to fiscally reward women for splitting the family unit, especially women who have children. It's not uncommon for a mother who earns the same as her husband to be approximately $1,000 better off per month if she breaks the marriage contract. If the income gap is substantial, a divorce could change a woman's life. Women initiate 70% of divorces in Western nations, and more marriages end up in divorce than not. This is because men will only initiate a divorce after an exhausted attempt at reconciliation. To put it as Johnny Taylor did, it's cheaper to keep her. On the other side of this, women have less reasons to reconcile and will often save on the effort in favour of a divorce that comes with a large financial payout. Let me break down just how ugly this dark side is. Here's a summary of the default terms of a marriage contract for most marriages without a prenuptial agreement. This analysis is assuming that the man makes the mistake of not taking financial authority, which is the story for 90% of marriages in America according to BusinessInsider.com. A woman's hypergamic nature will drive her to mate select a higher income earning male, which means that a man will be contributing at least 50%. This is the case for most marriages, but understand that if a woman earns more than the man, the chance of divorce is astronomically high. I work with probabilities, and for most marriages, the man will out-earn the woman. Let's just put it at a conservative 60-40 split. That is to say, the man will be contributing 1.5 times as much money into the kitty. Of that kitty, a woman will control 85% of consumer purchases, mostly for her. This stat is also from BusinessInsider.com. That brings a man's effective return to negative 300%, while a woman's return is a healthy 112.5%. Essentially, a woman has control over her income and most of a man's income for the duration of the contract. Now, when we look at the severance package for breaking the contract, a man will likely only get 20% of the shared wealth and he will have to transfer 80% of all his wealth acquired before, during, and sometimes even after the marriage until his children are 18 or until she marries someone else. Crunching the financials, men are 40% worse off because of a divorce, while women are 40% better off because of a divorce. What a fucking scandal. No man in their right mind would ever voluntarily enter into any sort of business contract that is unconscionable like this one. So why do men continue to do this with marriage? One of the reasons that men keep entering the marriage slaughterhouse is that women have strategies to ensure this keeps happening. Firstly, their strategy starts by attributing the failure of the marriage to the husband. This is formally known as the attribution bias. If a woman left you, it's almost certainly because you lacked a critical component of positive masculinity. Unfortunately, I almost never hear women explain it this way because it would shine too much light on female nature. The most common attribution you'll often hear from women is that he abused me and I had no other option, or words to that effect. The principle is to disgrace a man's reputation in the most believable way to garner social sympathy for a situation. This explanation is very quickly accepted as truth by other women and men. This is because of the latest software update currently being programmed into the minds of the youth that makes them believe that men are toxic. Once people accept this as truth, no one will think to doubt people who claim that men are abusive, and no one will realise the common pattern and the overall dark side of marriage. The next part of the strategy is to brainwash all young men into believing that marriage is a noble aspiration. They do this by controlling social conventions and the mainstream social standards. It's in a woman's best interests to make men believe that getting married and having a family is life's biggest purpose. What you're witnessing is a woman's innate solipsism. It's a woman's lifelong goal to get married from the time she's a little girl, not a man's. Most women make the mistake of believing that whatever is good for the goose is good for the gander. The majority of men only get married because they're brainwashed into believing that marriage is a necessary component for long-term happiness. Their strategy is to set the social conventions that enable them to achieve their lifelong objectives. Women pushing 30 will challenge men who go against this trend in order to bring you back in line for the betterment of the sisterhood. Think for yourself and don't blindly follow their assertions, as it could be your unravelling. The final part of the strategy is to completely censor, block, or exile anyone who speaks up about the true masculine experience. Even men who just want to tell their story will be shamed by anyone who wants the dark side of marriage to fly under the radar. Something that makes this problem worse is that child support payments are often paid directly to the mother. Women, for justifiable reasons, are viewed as the primary carer. A woman's feminine nature gives her an innate advantage in nurturing people, especially her own children. Women are often awarded majority of child custody to reflect their contribution in the relationship. Unfortunately, the male contribution to raising children is completely ignored or assumed to be purely financial. This means that men are often ordered to contribute more finances than the financial contribution they made when in the marriage. These child support payments are paid directly to the mother and not the child. She can use this money to go on holidays, buy a new car, and purchase a house. In the West, the laws are currently set up to prioritise women after a divorce and not the children. When the child support income is paid directly to the mother, the financial incentive for divorce is complete, and society is enabling the creation of a culture of women who are seeking liberation and financial security through divorce. This needs to be stopped, if anything, for the sake of the children, because divorce affects them the most, and they're completely innocent. Understanding female nature will help you understand why women behave like this. A woman's hypergamic nature drives her to always be seeking more resources from her surrounding environment to support the survival of her children. After childbirth, a woman's priorities shift to her children, and this can often be at the husband's expense. Remember the mating strategy of the praying mantis from episode 65. The female mantis completely devours the male during reproduction to support the growth of her offspring, and human females can be just as ruthless. This includes leveraging the law to her advantage and maybe even making false allegations of heinous crimes to maximise her exploitation. Not all women will exploit men like this, but you need to be prepared for the ones that do. You might think your missus is different because she shows redeeming qualities, but this is a fool's perspective. The woman that divorces you is never the same woman that married you. I've personally witnessed some of the sweetest, most peace-loving women who I've known for over 30 years turn into absolute monsters in their separation. Most men don't truly discover the ugly, duplicitous side of female nature until a woman has prepared herself for divorce. The darker aspects of female nature are concealed from public view to suit the feminine imperative. The utter shock men experience when they see a side to their ex-wife that they never saw before can be enough to drive men to suicide. This experience is an epidemic among men who often don't realise it until it's too late. Present day, there really isn't the practical perception that there was of marriage 100 years ago, especially with the current family laws so heavily biased against men. My recommendation is to go back to the traditional form of marriage. Remove the emotion of love out of the equation entirely and only get married for practical reasons. For men living in Western countries, this means that you should only consider marriage if there are significant tax concessions, for citizenship reasons, or for any other practical purpose such as prison visitation rights. Alternatively, you could get married in another country where divorce is frowned upon or harder to obtain. The laws in a lot of these countries are also structured to benefit the children and not any parent at the expense of another, but this could always change in the future. If you do decide to get married, there are ways in which you can control the risk of your wife leaving you. Marriages where the man is able to be the financial authority is a great divorce mitigation strategy. Men, after all, make a larger contribution to the kitty, and so they should get a larger say in how the joint assets are spent. Refer back to episode 40 for more details on asserting financial control from within your relationship. In addition to maintaining financial control, holding a tight frame of control in every component of the relationship will keep a woman in your frame permanently. Even if it's financially beneficial for her to divorce you, she won't want to because you're training her to defer to your authority. Episode 51 is worth a rewatch to remind yourself of the 9 assertions you need to become accustomed to assert frame control. Another mitigation strategy is to offer your wife something that she needs that can't be bought. Women have other requirements that they deem you responsible for meeting that aren't financial. If you can provide her with something that's important to her, something that she can't get from the government or any other source, then you further mitigate risk. These requirements are all listed out in episode 65. The final mitigation strategy is to obtain a prenuptial agreement. While they don't always work, they can serve to discourage a woman from divorce because the financial incentives aren't as clear, or they're likely to be much less than the average return of 40%. It also helps you filter for women who are after your money before you get married. I covered prenuptial agreements in episode 22. It's unfortunate that modern women don't appreciate marriage in the same way that traditional women do. After all, marriage is a social construct designed to benefit them. It has always served to protect women and make them happy, and not to oppress them. The current attitude that women in the West have towards marriage is very poor. There will be marriages that last until death, but there is always an element of fortune in these marriages. No man can accurately predict how a woman's behaviour or desires will change over time, and there is always the chance that she changes her mind about being married to you. Marriage in the West is just not worth it. If you do decide to get married, take your emotions out of it. Rationally weigh the pros and cons and make a logical decision that suits you. Don't be excessively optimistic about marriage, because you will get stung. At the same time, don't allow yourself to become pessimistic either, because this will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. The best strategy is to be realistic. The reality is that as a man, you will never come out of a marriage with a higher percent than you contributed to the marriage. You will always be losing something. A prenuptial agreement is a great start and will protect you from the women who are marrying you for your money in the short term. But the longer the marriage goes on, the more likely it is that you'll lose more in a divorce. Implement and maintain the strategies listed in today's episode to further mitigate your risk of divorce by setting yourself up in a way that you are completely indispensable to your wife. You need to make sure that your woman remains better off with you than without you. Remember, all relationships are a mutual exchange. Balance out the financial incentive of divorce by offering her a larger incentive to keep you. Never lose sight of the fact that a woman can completely destroy you with her ruthless form of hypergamy and cover yourself accordingly. Thanks for watching today's episode. In episode 109, I'll run through why you must never buy a woman flowers. Subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when it drops. Catch you then.